We've decided this year would be better without your complications, my daughter-in-law Christine said with ice-cold finality as she stood blocking the entrance to what had been our family's Christmas gathering place for 35 years. What she didn't know was that by 10 a.m. the next morning, she'd be frantically calling real estate agents across northern Colorado, desperately trying to understand how the Rocky Mountain cabin where her children had spent every Christmas of their lives had just been sold to complete strangers for $1.2 million. Before we dive into this incredible story of family betrayal and the most satisfying Christmas gift I ever gave myself, make sure to hit that like button, drop a comment telling me about your own family holiday drama, and subscribe so you never miss stories like this one. Trust me, you're going to want to see what happens when a family pushes the wrong 70-year-old grandmother too far, especially when that grandmother owns the property they consider their ancestral Christmas paradise. My name is Margaret Chen. I'm 70 years old, and this story begins 3 years ago when I made what I thought was a generous decision to expand our family Christmas celebrations to include extended relatives and in-laws. A decision that would teach me the hardest lesson of my life about the difference between being a gracious host and being a doormat for entitled family members who mistake kindness for weakness. But to understand how I ended up being banned from my own family's Christmas celebration before becoming the person who single-handedly ended 40 years of family tradition, you need to know who I was before I let my desire for family harmony cloud my judgment about respect and boundaries. For 42 years, I was Margaret Chen, senior architect and founding partner at Chen & Associates Architectural Design, one of the most prestigious residential design firms in Denver. I didn't just design homes, I created spaces that captured families' dreams and reflected their deepest values. My firm specialized in luxury mountain retreats and sustainable residential developments throughout the Colorado Rockies, and I had built a client base that included everyone from tech entrepreneurs seeking digital detox retreats to Olympic athletes wanting training compounds to Hollywood celebrities who needed Colorado getaway properties where they could escape public attention. Started with nothing but an architecture degree from University of Colorado Boulder and a fierce determination to prove that a woman could not only survive, but thrive in the male-dominated world of luxury architecture, when my husband David died suddenly of a heart attack at age 52. Leaving me with 2 grown children and a half-finished architectural practice that most industry colleagues assumed would collapse without his business development skills and client relationships. David had been the face of our partnership, the charming salesman who secured clients and managed relationships while I handled the technical design work and project management. When he died, everyone expected me to either sell the practice or merge with a larger firm where I could continue as a technical employee rather than a business owner. Instead, I took the $150,000 life insurance payout and made a decision that would define the rest of my professional life. I would build something so spectacular that it would speak for itself and establish my reputation as an architect who could deliver results that exceeded clients' wildest expectations. My first major project after David's death was designing my own healing space, what would become the most photographed and architecturally significant cabin in Summit County. I purchased 25 acres of pristine forest near Breckenridge for $45,000, using most of my insurance money and taking a calculated risk that would either establish my career or bankrupt me before I turned 40. The cabin I designed wasn't just a house. It was a 4,500 square foot masterpiece that seemed to grow organically from the mountainside. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the Rocky Mountains like living artwork that changed with every season. Sustainable energy systems made it completely off-grid capable, with solar panels, geothermal heating, and rainwater collection systems that were revolutionary for 1988. Interior spaces flowed seamlessly between indoor and outdoor living, with retractable glass walls that could open entire rooms to mountain breezes and natural soundscapes. The great room featured a 2-story stone fireplace built from local granite, with a chimney that doubled as a sculptural element visible from the highway below. The kitchen was designed around a massive island crafted from a single piece of locally sourced wood, with commercial-grade appliances that could handle everything from intimate dinners to large family gatherings. 3 master suites provided privacy for multiple generations, while a loft office space offered views that inspired creativity and contemplation. But the cabin's most distinctive feature was the observation deck I designed on the 3rd level, a circular space with 360-degree views that became known locally as Margaret's Mountain Crown. Accessible only by a spiral staircase crafted from reclaimed barnwood, the deck became the cabin's spiritual center and the place where our family would gather every Christmas morning to watch the sunrise over the Continental Divide. Building. The cabin took 18 months and required every skill I had developed as an architect, plus several I had to learn on the job. I supervised construction personally, working alongside contractors who initially questioned my technical knowledge, but gradually came to respect my attention to detail and uncompromising vision for quality. When the cabin was completed in late 1989, it immediately attracted attention from architectural publications and high-end real estate agents. Architectural Digest featured it on their cover in 1995, calling it a perfect fusion of luxury and environmental consciousness. Mountain Living magazine named it Colorado's most inspiring mountain residence. Design Within Reach used it as a case study for sustainable luxury living. But more importantly, the cabin became proof that I could create something extraordinary even in my darkest moments, and that David's death didn't have to mean the end of my professional ambitions. The recognition from that project launched Chen & Associates into the premier mountain architecture firm in Colorado and established my reputation as an architect who could deliver both aesthetic brilliance and technical innovation. Over the next 4 decades, my designs shaped luxury developments throughout the Rockies, from Aspen to Vail to Telluride to Park City. Each project built on the principles I had established with the cabin: seamless integration with natural environments, cutting-edge sustainable technology, and interior spaces that enhanced rather than competed with the mountain settings. Sustainable resort complex I designed in Steamboat Springs became a model for environmentally conscious hospitality development, winning national awards and generating over $200 million in tourism revenue for the local economy. The luxury ski village I planned in Winter Park featured 47 custom homes that sold for an average of $2.8 million each, with waiting lists that extended 3 years before construction was even completed. My residential designs consistently sold, for record prices, and were featured in design magazines across the country. Wealthy clients would specifically seek out a Margaret Chen house as a status symbol that represented both luxury and environmental responsibility. By the early 2000s, having a Chen-designed property was considered the ultimate statement of sophisticated mountain living. But I didn't just design for others. I practiced what I preached, building my own investment portfolio through decades of strategic real estate acquisitions, stock market investments, and business partnerships that most people can only dream about. My first major investment breakthrough came in 1994, when I partnered with 2 other investors to purchase a struggling ski resort near Loveland Pass for $3.2 million. While my partners focused on immediate operational improvements, I saw the potential for complete redevelopment as a luxury destination resort that would attract year-round visitors rather than just winter skiers. I was right. By 2001, that resort was worth $18 million, and my share of the profits funded my next major investment phase, a portfolio of commercial properties in downtown Denver that benefited from the city's explosive growth during the tech boom. A stake in a sustainable building materials company that would eventually be acquired by a major construction conglomerate, and most lucratively, early investments in Colorado marijuana businesses that became legal gold mines when recreational cannabis was legalized in 2014. My cannabis investments alone returned over 2,000% when Colorado's green rush attracted national Investment and my small stakes in cultivation and retail operations became worth millions practically overnight. The building materials company sale generated a $1.8 million payout when it was acquired in 2019. My Denver commercial properties appreciated consistently and provided steady rental income through every economic cycle. By my 60th birthday, Chen and Associates was managing projects worth over $500 million annually, and I owned the firm outright after buying out David's estate and later partners who couldn't match my vision or work ethic. By my 65th birthday, my personal net worth had reached $8 million, not including the cabin's appreciated value or the various business partnerships and investment vehicles I had established over the years. The Breckenridge cabin had become my most valuable single asset, now worth $1.2 million thanks to both its unique architecture and the explosion in Colorado mountain real estate values over the past 3 decades. The original 25-acre parcel that I had purchased for $45,000 in 1988 was now worth over $400,000 just for the land, with similar properties selling for $15,000, $20,000 per acre when they became available. I also owned my primary residence in Cherry Creek, Denver, a $1.8 million contemporary home that I had designed and built in 2005. Featuring cutting-edge sustainable technology and architectural elements that had been copied by designers throughout the region. The house showcased the latest in solar technology, gray water systems, and smart home automation, serving as both my personal sanctuary and a demonstration space for potential clients. My investment portfolio was carefully diversified across multiple asset classes and geographic regions. Real estate development projects in growing Colorado markets provided both steady income and appreciation potential. Blue-chip dividend stocks offered quarterly payments that helped fund my lifestyle without touching principal. Municipal bonds from stable Colorado municipalities provided tax-free interest income. International equity funds gave me exposure to emerging markets and currency diversification. But perhaps my most valuable assets were the business relationships and professional reputation I had built over 4 decades in Colorado's architectural and development communities. I sat on the boards of 3 major environmental nonprofits. I was a founding member of the Colorado Sustainable Building Council. I had consulting relationships with architecture firms across the Rocky Mountain region, who sought my expertise for challenging mountain projects. Most importantly, I had created multiple streams of passive income that generated approximately $32,000 per month without requiring active work. Consulting fees from architecture firms seeking my expertise added $15,000 monthly. Rental income from 3 residential properties I owned in Boulder contributed $8,000 monthly. Dividends from my diversified stock portfolio provided $6,000 monthly. And royalties from a sustainable building systems patent I held generated $3,000 monthly. This wasn't money I had to earn through active work. It was money that flowed into my accounts automatically, month after month, year after year, whether I was designing new projects, traveling to architecture conferences, or hosting ungrateful family members who had no idea how much their mountain paradise had cost to create and maintain. But perhaps my most important asset was the knowledge I had accumulated about property, development, real estate law, family dynamics around inherited property, and the psychology of entitlement that can develop when people become accustomed to benefiting from assets they didn't create or earn. 42 years of designing homes for wealthy families had taught me how people relate to spaces, how property becomes emotionally significant across generations, and most importantly, how to protect property ownership from people who feel entitled to spaces they didn't pay for, maintain, or contribute to creating. I understood property law, estate planning, tax optimization, and asset protection strategies that most people never learn. I knew how to structure ownership arrangements that looked generous on the surface, but contained protections that would activate if recipients became ungrateful, demanding, or abusive. I had dealt with every type of entitled client, demanding, family member, and property-seeking opportunist during my decades in architecture and development. wealthy clients who expected unlimited revisions without additional fees, family members who assumed they deserved vacation homes they couldn't afford, business partners who tried to claim credit for work they hadn't contributed to. I knew the warning signs of entitlement and exploitation. I understood the tactics people use to gradually gain control over resources they don't own. And I had both the resources and the knowledge to protect my property when family members crossed the line from gratitude to presumption. What my son and his wife would eventually discover was that a woman who had built an $8 million fortune and designed some of Colorado's most coveted properties wasn't someone who could be easily manipulated, controlled, or taken advantage of, especially when it came to her own real estate. My son Robert had always been what educators politely call creatively gifted but practically challenged. As a child, he was artistic, sensitive, and intellectually curious, but struggled with any responsibility that required sustained effort, attention to detail, or meeting deadlines. He was the kid who would start elaborate art projects but lose interest when the work became tedious, who would volunteer enthusiastically for family tasks but need constant reminding to follow through on commitments. In elementary school, Robert showed genuine talent for drawing and painting, spending hours creating detailed sketches of animals, landscapes, and fantastical creatures that demonstrated real artistic ability. But he would rarely finish projects once the initial excitement wore off, leaving behind a trail of half-completed paintings, abandoned sculptures, and art supplies that accumulated in his bedroom like archaeological layers of discarded enthusiasms. High school. This pattern intensified as Robert's interests expanded, but his follow-through remained inconsistent. He would become passionate about photography and spend weeks researching cameras and techniques, but would lose interest when he was assigned to photograph the school's football games rather than pursuing his preferred artistic subjects. He would join environmental clubs with genuine enthusiasm for conservation, but would drift away when meetings became focused on fundraising rather than philosophical discussions about nature. I supported his creative explorations because I understood the value of artistic development and because I believed that finding your true calling requires experimentation and exploration. I also supported them because I could easily afford to fund his interests, and because seeing him excited about creative possibilities brought me joy, even when those possibilities didn't develop into sustained commitments. His room at the cabin became a museum of abandoned hobbies, professional quality camera equipment from his photography phase, musical instruments from his brief interest in composing environmental soundscapes, art supplies from various painting and sculpture experiments, camping and climbing gear from his outdoor adventure period, and boxes of research materials from environmental projects that had never progressed beyond the planning stage. When Robert attended Colorado State University, it was primarily because I insisted that he needed a degree to provide stability and options, and because I was covering all educational expenses including tuition, housing, meal plans, and the various equipment and supplies his changing majors required. He started as an art major, genuinely excited about developing his artistic talents in a structured academic environment. But he became frustrated when courses required technical skill development and criticism of his work, rather than pure creative expression. He switched to environmental science, drawn by his genuine concern for conservation and sustainability, but struggled with the mathematical and analytical requirements that formed the foundation of the field. Next came communications, which he thought would combine his artistic interest with practical career applications, but he found the coursework too focused on business applications rather than creative expression. He experimented with business administration, thinking it might provide practical skills while allowing flexibility for creative pursuits, but the competitive atmosphere and profit-focused curriculum conflicted with his idealistic worldview. Finally, he settled on a general studies degree that allowed him to combine courses from multiple departments without committing to any single field of study. He graduated after 6 years with a degree that represented more persistence than focus, and academic credentials that were impressive in breadth, but lacked the depth that employers typically sought. After graduation, Robert moved to Boulder and spent 4 years finding his direction while working a series of entry-level positions in outdoor recreation, environmental nonprofits, art galleries, and community organizations. Each job started with enthusiasm and ended when the reality of workplace responsibilities conflicted with his idealistic expectations or when advancement opportunities required skills and commitments he hadn't developed. His first position was customer service at a high-end ski equipment company in downtown Boulder. The job seemed perfect. He could share his love of outdoor activities while earning money and learning about gear and equipment. But Robert quit after 5 months because he felt the company was too focused on selling expensive equipment to wealthy customers rather than promoting authentic outdoor experiences and environmental conservation. Next came a research assistant position at an environmental consulting firm that conducted environmental impact studies for development projects. The work seemed aligned with his values and interests, but Robert struggled with the technical analysis and detailed reporting that formed the core of the job. He quit after 8 months, explaining that the work was too focused on compliance and regulations rather than meaningful environmental protection. His third attempt was as a gallery coordinator at a Boulder art space that featured local artists and hosted community events. This seemed like the perfect combination of his artistic interests and his desire to support creative communities. But Robert became frustrated with the business aspects of gallery management, tracking sales, managing inventory, coordinating with artists about pricing and promotion, and quit after 4 months, claiming that commercialization was destroying the authentic artistic expression he wanted to support. Each job loss was explained by philosophical conflicts, personality differences with supervisors, or workplace environments that didn't appreciate his holistic approach to work and life. Robert consistently framed his employment difficulties as evidence that traditional workplaces couldn't accommodate his values and creative vision, rather than as opportunities to develop professional skills and work ethic. I supported him through these career transitions because I believed he was simply taking time to find meaningful work that aligned with his values and talents. I also supported him because I loved him and wanted him to find satisfaction and success, even if his path was different from conventional career development. Looking back, I realize I may have enabled his pattern of avoiding difficult commitments by providing a financial safety net that removed the natural consequences of his choices. When he quit jobs impulsively, he didn't face rent payments, utility bills, or grocery expenses. He faced a comfortable guest room at the cabin, home-cooked meals, and maternal encouragement to keep exploring until you find work that feeds your soul rather than just pays bills. The cabin became Robert's retreat from workplace disappointments and professional challenges. He would spend weeks at a time hiking, reading, painting, and reconnecting with nature after each job ended. While I appreciated his love for the mountains and understood the restorative power of natural environments, I gradually realized that the cabin was becoming an escape from responsibility rather than a source of inspiration for personal growth. When Robert met Christine at age 31, I was hopeful that marriage might provide the external structure, motivation, and partnership he seemed to need to develop more consistent work habits and realistic life planning. Christine was 28, had graduated from University of Colorado Boulder with honors in business administration, and had been working in marketing for outdoor gear companies for 5 years. She seemed practical, ambitious, financially responsible, and genuinely fond of Robert, despite his inconsistent career path and idealistic approach to professional life. Christine came from an upper-middle-class family in Fort Collins where hard work, education, and financial responsibility were emphasized as core family values. Her father, Michael, was a successful insurance broker who had built his own agency from scratch and provided a comfortable lifestyle for his family through disciplined work and smart financial planning. Her mother, Linda, was a high school counselor who had worked throughout Christine's childhood while also managing household responsibilities and community volunteer commitments. Christine had worked her way through college with academic scholarships, summer internships with outdoor gear companies, and part-time jobs in retail and customer service that taught her practical workplace skills and financial management. She understood career planning, budgeting, goal setting, and professional development in ways that Robert had never been forced to learn due to my financial support. During their engagement, Christine seemed to have a genuinely positive influence on Robert's decision-making and follow-through. She encouraged him to complete projects he started, rather than abandoning them when they became challenging. She helped him create realistic budgets that connected his spending to his actual income, rather than relying on my financial backup. She suggested practical steps toward finding work that could combine his environmental interests with stable income and career advancement opportunities. Most importantly, Christine seemed to bring out Robert's more responsible and mature qualities without trying to change his fundamental personality or interests. She participated in his outdoor activities and supported his environmental values, while also encouraging him to develop practical skills and professional habits that would serve their future family. I was genuinely impressed by her positive influence, and hopeful that marriage would provide the partnership Robert needed to channel his talents and interests into sustainable career success. I was also grateful that someone other than me would be encouraging him toward responsibility and self-sufficiency, which would ultimately benefit everyone involved. I paid for their wedding, a $28,000 celebration at the Broadmoor in Colorado Springs that Christine had dreamed of since childhood. The Broadmoor was Colorado's most prestigious resort, and the wedding was elegant and sophisticated, with stunning views of the Rocky Mountains and Cheyenne Mountain providing a backdrop that perfectly captured the natural beauty that both Robert and Christine loved. We had 120 guests, including my professional colleagues from the architecture and development communities, longtime family friends who had watched Robert grow up, and Christine's extended family from throughout Colorado. The celebration reflected both families' love of the outdoors and appreciation for natural beauty, with locally sourced flowers, Colorado wines, and menu items that highlighted regional ingredients and culinary traditions. The reception featured a 4-course dinner prepared by the Broadmoor's executive chef, showcasing Colorado lamb, local trout, and seasonal vegetables from nearby farms. The open bar offered premium wines from Colorado vineyards, craft cocktails featuring local spirits, and locally brewed beers that reflected the state's thriving craft brewing culture. Live music was provided by a folk trio that specialized in mountain wedding entertainment and knew how to create atmosphere without overwhelming conversation. Christine's dress was a stunning designer gown from a Denver boutique that specialized in wedding fashion, and Robert wore a custom suit that actually made him look like the successful professional I hoped he would eventually become. The entire celebration was photographed by one of Colorado's premier wedding photographers, creating memories that would last a lifetime and documentation of what I hoped would be the beginning of Robert's transition to adult responsibility. Was happy to fund their dream wedding, because I could easily afford the expense, because I wanted to welcome Christine into our family with appropriate generosity and celebration, and because I hoped this investment in their happiness would contribute to a successful marriage that would benefit both of them personally and professionally. The wedding was also important to me because it represented the beginning of a new chapter for our family, one that might include grandchildren who would grow up understanding the cabin's significance and carrying forward the family traditions that David and I had established over decades of mountain living. When Robert and Christine started talking about buying their first house 8 months after their honeymoon, I provided the $35,000 down payment as a wedding gift that would help them establish the stable foundation they needed for their new life together. The house was a charming 3-bedroom bungalow in North Boulder, built in the 1920s with original hardwood floors, craftsman-style details, and mature landscaping that provided privacy and character. The location was perfect for their lifestyle, close to hiking trails and rock climbing areas that Robert loved, with easy access to both Denver's job market and the mountains where they spent their recreational time. The house was also within walking distance of downtown Boulder's shops, restaurants, and cultural venues, providing the urban amenities that Christine appreciated without sacrificing the connection to nature that was important to both of them. The why. Mortgage payments were manageable on their combined income, and the house provided the stable base they needed to build their careers and potentially start a family. Christine was earning $58,000 annually in marketing for a Boulder-based outdoor gear company, and Robert had finally found relatively stable employment as a program coordinator for a nonprofit organization that provided outdoor education programs for urban youth from Denver and surrounding communities. Robert's nonprofit work seemed ideal for his interests and values. He was organizing wilderness camping trips, rock climbing instruction, and environmental education programs that introduced inner-city kids to Colorado's natural wonders while teaching them outdoor skills and environmental awareness. The work paid $42,000 annually, which wasn't substantial, but was steady and aligned with his passion for environmental education and social justice. Together, their $100,000 household income was sufficient to support their mortgage, living expenses, outdoor gear and activities, and the modest but comfortable lifestyle they had chosen. The boost from my down payment gift had eliminated the largest barrier to homeownership and given them immediate equity that provided financial security and stability. For the first year and a half of their marriage, this arrangement seemed to work well for everyone involved. Robert was more focused and responsible about work when he had mortgage payments and household obligations that required consistent income. Christine managed their finances carefully and seemed to be building the stable, adventure-filled life she had always envisioned for herself. I enjoyed being a generous mother-in-law who could provide opportunities and financial security that enhanced their quality of life without creating unhealthy dependency. The house purchase seemed like an appropriate one-time gift that would provide lasting benefits without requiring ongoing financial support from me. I thought I was witnessing the successful maturation of my son and the beginning of a financially responsible family unit that would eventually include grandchildren, who could grow up with the same connection to Colorado's mountains that had shaped my own life and Robert's childhood. What I was actually witnessing was the calm before a storm of escalating demands and expectations that would gradually transform my generous support into systematic exploitation of my property, my resources, and ultimately my dignity as the family matriarch who had created the mountain paradise they would come to consider their birthright rather than my gift. When Sophia and Daniel were born on a snowy February morning in 2019, 18 months after Robert and Christine's wedding, I was in the delivery room watching the next generation of our family take their first breaths. As I held my granddaughter Sophia, born first, 12 minutes ahead of her brother, I made a silent promise that these children would grow up understanding their connection to the mountains and to the beautiful spaces that had shaped our family's story for over 3 decades. The twins were beautiful, healthy babies who brought tremendous joy to our family and represented everything I had hoped for when I supported Robert and Christine's marriage. Sophia emerged alert and curious, her dark eyes seeming to take in every detail of her new world with the same intense focus I recognized from my own architectural observations. Daniel was more contemplative, content to observe and absorb his surroundings with the patient attention that reminded me of David's quiet strength. Within hours of their birth, I had opened college savings accounts for each child with initial deposits of $15,000. I had watched too many families struggle with educational costs and wanted to ensure that Sophia and Daniel's opportunities would be limited only by their abilities and interests, not by their parents' financial resources or the uncertainty of future college expenses. But more importantly, I began planning how to share the cabin's magic with them and create the foundation for family traditions that would connect them to their heritage and to the natural world that had been so important to their grandfather David and to me throughout our lives together. As the twins grew from infants into curious toddlers, their personalities became more distinct and delightful. Sophia was adventurous and determined, the kind of child who would climb furniture, explore every corner of the cabin, and test every boundary with fearless persistence that sometimes terrified her parents, but filled me with pride. She approached the world with confidence and curiosity that reminded me of my own childhood determination to explore and understand everything around me. Daniel was thoughtful and methodical, preferring to understand how things worked before interacting with them. He would watch Sophia's experiments with careful attention, learning from her discoveries before deciding whether to try similar adventures himself. His approach to problem-solving was systematic and creative, showing early signs of the engineering mindset that I hoped might eventually lead him toward architecture or environmental design. I loved being a grandmother more than I had expected, and was actively involved in their care during those precious early years. I would babysit several evenings per week, so Robert and Christine could maintain their relationship through date nights and outdoor activities that were important to their marriage and individual well-being. Most importantly, I spent countless hours at the cabin teaching the twins about wildlife, showing them how to identify different trees, rocks, and mountain flowers, and creating nature-based activities that would establish their emotional connection to the mountain environment that had shaped our family's identity. The cabin's 25 acres provided endless opportunities for exploration and learning. I created a children's garden where Sophia and Daniel could plant vegetables and flowers, learning about growing cycles and the relationship between human activity and natural systems. I established bird feeding stations throughout the property and taught them to identify different species and understand their migration patterns and habitat needs. When they were old enough to walk confidently, I designed treasure hunts that would take them to different areas of the property while teaching them about local geology, plant identification, and wildlife tracking. These activities combined education with adventure, creating positive associations with learning and outdoor exploration that I hoped would last throughout their lives. The twins' favorite activity was our morning ritual of climbing to the observation deck, Margaret's mountain crown, to watch the sunrise over the Continental Divide. Even as toddlers, they seemed to understand that this was a special place and a sacred time for our family. They would sit quietly in my lap, wrapped in blankets, watching the mountains change color as the sun rose and listening to my stories about their grandfather David and the early days of building our mountain paradise. These sunrise moments became the foundation of their relationship with the cabin and with me. Years later, when they were old enough to understand, I would explain how their grandfather and I had chosen this exact spot for the observation deck because it provided the perfect view of the sunrise on Christmas morning, and how we had always planned to share this tradition with future generations of our family. When Christine decided to reduce her work schedule to part-time after the twins were born, I supported the decision both emotionally and practically. Having twins is exhausting under any circumstances, and I understood her desire to focus on motherhood during those crucial early years while still maintaining some professional identity and intellectual stimulation. Christine had been successful in her marketing career, earning respect from colleagues and developing expertise in outdoor industry marketing that would be valuable throughout her professional life. But she also recognized that the demands of caring for infant twins while maintaining a full-time career would create stress that could affect both her family relationships and her professional performance. The reduction in Christine's income, from $58,000 annually to approximately $25,000 for part-time consulting work with her former employer, created some financial pressure on their household budget, but I was happy to help with additional expenses that arose from having 2 babies. And from Christine's career transition, childcare costs for the hours when Christine was working, medical expenses not covered by their health insurance, additional baby equipment and supplies, and the general increase in household costs that comes with expanding from 2 people to 4. All of these expenses added up to several $1,000s beyond what Robert and Christine could comfortably manage on their reduced income. Contributed approximately $12,000 during the twins' first year to help cover these additional expenses, and I considered it money well spent to ensure that Sophia and Daniel had everything they needed, and that Christine could focus on motherhood without the constant stress of financial worry. My financial support was practical and focused on genuine needs rather than luxury items or lifestyle inflation. I covered the cost difference between basic and comprehensive health insurance to ensure the twins had excellent pediatric care. I paid for high-quality car seats, cribs, strollers, and safety equipment that would protect them and last through multiple years of use. When Christine needed professional clothing for her part-time consulting work, I provided that. When the twins needed additional clothes as they grew rapidly through different sizes, I ensured they had appropriate clothing for all seasons and activities. When unexpected medical expenses arose, emergency room visits, specialist consultations, prescription medications, I covered those costs without hesitation. But perhaps most importantly, I made sure that my financial support enhanced rather than replaced Robert and Christine's parental responsibilities and decision-making authority. I asked for their preferences before making purchases. I respected their choices about brands, styles, and approaches to childcare. I provided money for expenses they identified, rather than imposing my own priorities or judgments about what the twins needed. During the twins' toddler years, as they became more mobile and curious, I continued to be actively involved and financially supportive in ways that strengthened family relationships and created positive experiences for everyone involved. When Sophia and Daniel outgrew their cribs and needed toddler beds, I purchased beautiful handcrafted furniture from local Colorado artisans, pieces that were designed to grow with them through their childhood years, and that reflected the same commitment to quality and craftsmanship that had guided my architectural career. The beds were made from sustainably harvested pine by a furniture maker in Evergreen who specialized in children's furniture that combined safety, durability, and aesthetic beauty. Each bed featured built-in storage for toys and books, convertible, designs that could transition from toddler beds to regular twin beds, and finishes that would age gracefully and withstand years of active use. I also commissioned matching dressers, toy chests, and bookcases that would provide organized storage, while teaching the twins to take care of their belongings and create orderly, peaceful living spaces. The furniture was expensive, nearly $3,000 per child, but it was investment-quality pieces that would serve them well into their teenage years and possibly beyond. When the twins needed car seats, strollers, outdoor gear, and the endless array of equipment that active mountain kids require, I provided those items as gifts that gave me genuine joy to give, and that made Robert and Christine's lives easier and safer. The car seats were top-of-the-line models that provided maximum safety protection and would accommodate the twins from toddlerhood through elementary school. The strollers were all-terrain models designed for Colorado's varied landscape, capable of handling everything from city sidewalks to mountain hiking trails. The outdoor gear included appropriately sized backpacks, hiking boots, rain gear, and warm clothing that would allow the twins to participate safely in family outdoor activities. I considered these purchases investments in the twins' safety, development, and connection to the outdoor lifestyle that was so important to our family's identity. Quality gear would last longer, perform better, and ultimately cost less than repeatedly replacing inferior equipment. More importantly, having appropriate equipment would allow Sophia and Daniel to participate fully in family adventures without safety concerns or comfort issues that might create negative associations with outdoor activities. When Sophia showed early interest in art and nature, I was thrilled to encourage her creative development in ways that connected her artistic talents to the natural world that surrounded our family. I set up a dedicated children's art studio in one of the cabin's guest bedrooms, with child-sized easels, washable paints, brushes designed for small hands, and abundant paper and canvas for experimental projects. The art studio overlooked the cabin's gardens and provided natural light that was perfect for artistic work. I stocked it with nature-based art supplies, leaves and flowers for printing projects, interesting rocks and shells for sculpture work, natural pigments that could be used to create earth-toned paints, and books about famous artists who had been inspired by natural environments. Sophia's artistic projects became a bridge between creativity and environmental education. She would collect interesting leaves and create detailed drawings that helped her learn about different tree species. She would paint landscapes that captured different seasons at the cabin, developing observational skills while documenting the changing beauty of our mountain environment. I also arranged for Sophia to take art lessons with a local artist who specialized in nature-based art education for children. These lessons combined traditional artistic techniques with outdoor exploration and environmental awareness, perfectly matching Sophia's interests and our family's values. The art instruction cost $120 per month, which was beyond what Robert and Christine could afford, but I was happy to invest in Sophia's artistic development. The lessons provided professional guidance that I couldn't offer, social interaction with other creative children, and exposure to artistic techniques and materials that would expand her creative possibilities. When Daniel demonstrated fascination with building and engineering, I was equally enthusiastic about encouraging his mechanical interests in ways that might eventually lead him toward architecture, environmental design, or sustainable technology development. I provided increasingly sophisticated construction sets that challenged his problem-solving abilities while teaching principles of engineering, physics, and design. Starting with basic wooden blocks and simple Lego sets, I gradually introduced more complex building systems that required planning, patience, and spatial reasoning skills. Daniel's favorite projects involved creating outdoor building challenges, using natural materials found around the cabin property. We would design and build bridges across small streams, construct shelters using fallen branches and logs, and create water diversion systems that demonstrated principles of hydraulics and environmental engineering. These activities combined hands-on learning with outdoor exploration, teaching Daniel to observe natural systems while developing skills that might serve him throughout his life. More importantly, they established his connection to the cabin as a place of learning and discovery rather than just recreation. I also enrolled Daniel in a robotics program for young children at the Boulder Public Library, a program that introduced basic programming concepts through age-appropriate activities and provided early exposure to technology and engineering careers. The program cost $200 per semester and required transportation to Boulder twice per week, which Robert and Christine couldn't manage with their work schedules and limited budget. I was happy to cover the costs and provide transportation, driving Daniel to his robotics classes and staying to observe his progress. Watching him work with other children on engineering challenges and seeing his excitement about technology and problem-solving convinced me that these investments in his education would provide lasting benefits for his intellectual development and career possibilities. By the time the twins turned 3, I was contributing approximately $18,000 annually to support various aspects of their family life. This included direct financial assistance for household expenses, educational activities and lessons, quality equipment and supplies, and occasional emergency expenses that arose from having 2 active toddlers. But I was happy to provide this support because I loved my family, because I could easily afford these contributions, and because I believed I was investing in the twins' development and their parents' success as a family unit. Watching Sophia and Daniel grow into confident, curious, creative children brought me tremendous joy and reminded me daily of why building the cabin and creating our family's mountain traditions had been so important. What I didn't recognize at the time was that my generous support was gradually training Robert and Christine to expect that Margaret will handle it was a viable solution for any expense or challenge that exceeded their basic budget. Instead of learning to prioritize, save, and make difficult choices about discretionary spending, they were learning that my resources were available as a backup plan for any family need or desire. The pattern began innocently enough. When unexpected expenses arose, emergency veterinary bills for their dog, car repairs that exceeded their emergency fund, medical expenses not covered by insurance, They would mention their financial stress during family conversations, and I would offer to help because I could afford to and because I wanted to prevent financial worry from affecting their relationship or their parenting. "Margaret, I don't know what we're going to do about the transmission repair," Christine would say with genuine worry. "The mechanic says it will cost $2,800, and we just don't have that kind of money right now with all the baby expenses." "Don't worry about it," I would respond. "I'll cover the car repair. You and Robert shouldn't have to stress about transportation when you have so much else to manage with the twins." My offers to help were motivated by love and a desire to solve problems that were causing stress for people I cared about. But they were also motivated by my ability to easily afford expenses that seemed overwhelming to Robert and Christine, and by my belief that financial security would allow them to focus on parenting and career development rather than constant worry about money. These individual instances of financial assistance seemed reasonable and appropriate at the time. Families help each other during difficult periods, and I had the resources to provide help without sacrificing my own security or lifestyle. But cumulatively, these contributions were establishing a pattern where my financial support became an expectation rather than an emergency resource. Robert and Christine began to mention financial challenges earlier in their development, before exhausting their own resources or exploring alternative solutions. They began to assume that significant expenses would be shared family responsibilities rather than individual household obligations. More concerning, they began to make decisions about spending and lifestyle choices based on what I could afford rather than what they could afford. When considering family activities, vacation plans, or major purchases, the question became, "Can Margaret help with this?" rather than, "Can we afford this ourselves?" The twins, even as young children, began to absorb the family dynamic where Grandma Margaret was the person who made expensive things possible. When they wanted toys, activities, or special experiences that their parents said were too expensive, they learned to ask me directly, understanding instinctively that I had different financial capabilities and decision-making criteria. "Grandma Margaret, can you buy me the big art set I saw at the store?" Sophia would ask with complete confidence that this was an appropriate request. "Mommy says it costs too much money, but you have lots of money, right?" "Grandma, my friend. Jake has a remote control airplane that costs $300, Daniel would inform me. "His grandpa bought it for him. Can you buy me one too?" These requests were natural for children who didn't understand money or family financial dynamics. But they revealed that the twins were learning to see me as the person who provided things their parents couldn't or wouldn't provide, rather than as a grandmother who occasionally gave special gifts. I responded to these requests by purchasing some of the items they wanted while also trying to teach them about gratitude, appropriate behavior, and the difference between needs and wants. But I wasn't consistent enough in setting boundaries or requiring them to contribute to the cost of expensive items through chores or saving their allowances. Instead, I was inadvertently teaching them that asking the right person for expensive things was more effective than earning them, and that some family members had unlimited resources that could be accessed through direct requests rather than through demonstrating need or merit. The twins were learning lessons about money, family, dynamics, and entitlement that would become problematic as they grew older, and their requests became more expensive and sophisticated. But at ages 3 and 4, their behavior seemed like normal childhood testing of boundaries, rather than the beginning of patterns that would eventually contribute to our family crisis. As the twins grew older and their personalities became more defined, the cabin became increasingly central to their understanding of family identity and their expectations about lifestyle and experiences. Every major holiday, birthday celebration, and family milestone was celebrated at the cabin, creating powerful emotional associations between the property and their happiest family memories. Christmas mornings began with our traditional sunrise, viewing from the observation deck, followed by gift opening in the great room around the massive stone fireplace, and elaborate family meals prepared in the cabin's gourmet kitchen. The twins' birthdays featured outdoor adventure parties with hiking, rock climbing instruction, and nature exploration activities that could only be conducted on the cabin's 25 acres of private land. Summer visits stretched for weeks at a time, with the twins participating in swimming lessons at the nearby lake, hiking expeditions to explore different areas of the surrounding national forest, and camping adventures on the cabin property that taught them outdoor skills while keeping them safe and comfortable. These experiences created deep emotional connections between the twins and the cabin, but they also established expectations about family lifestyle and spending that would become increasingly expensive and difficult to maintain without my continued financial support. The twins began to assume that elaborate celebrations, expensive activities, and premium experiences were normal family standards, rather than special treats made possible by my generosity and financial resources. They expected Christmas gifts that reflected the mountain luxury environment rather than modest, presents appropriate to their parents' income level. They anticipated birthday parties that featured professional instruction and specialized equipment, rather than simple gatherings with cake and games. Most concerning, they began to compare their lifestyle and experiences to those of their classmates and friends, not understanding that most families couldn't afford the level of experiences and opportunities that had become routine in their lives. "Why doesn't Jake's family have a mountain house like ours?" Sophia would ask innocently. "Don't all families have special places for vacations and holidays?" Tyler's family went camping at a regular campground for their vacation, Daniel would report with some confusion. "Why didn't they stay at their own cabin like we do?" These questions revealed that the twins were developing unrealistic expectations about normal family resources and lifestyle standards. They were growing up believing that having a luxury mountain retreat was typical rather than exceptional, and that the experiences and opportunities they enjoyed were family rights rather than gifts made possible by my financial support. Robert and Christine's responses to these questions weren't helping the twins develop realistic perspectives about money or family financial dynamics. Instead of explaining that our cabin was special because Grandma Margaret had worked hard to build and maintain it, they would deflect the questions or provide vague answers about different families having different situations. "Some families have different kinds of special places," Christine would say when the twins asked about friends' vacation arrangements. "We're very lucky to have Grandma Margaret's cabin where we can all spend time together." These responses positioned the cabin as a family resource rather than as my property that I shared with them, and failed to teach the twins appropriate gratitude or understanding of the effort and expense required to maintain their mountain paradise. Robert and Christine were also beginning to make assumptions about the cabin's availability and their role in decision-making about its use that would later become sources of conflict. They started planning family activities and inviting friends to visit without consulting me about dates, guest accommodations, or the impact on cabin maintenance and supplies. "Margaret, we've invited Christine's sister and her family to join us for Labor Day weekend," Robert would announce rather than ask. "The kids will love having their cousins at the cabin, and it will be great for the adults to spend time together in such a beautiful setting. I told my college roommate she could bring her family for a week in July," Christine would inform me. "She's been going through a difficult divorce, and I thought a mountain retreat would be exactly what she needs for healing and perspective." These announcements were presented as family decisions that had already been made, rather than as requests for my approval to use my property for hosting additional guests. Robert and Christine were beginning to treat the cabin as a family asset, rather than as my personal property that I generously shared with them. More problematic, they were making commitments that required my financial support without considering the costs involved. Additional guests meant higher utility bills, more wear and tear on furnishings and appliances, increased cleaning and maintenance expenses, and greater consumption of supplies and amenities that I provided for cabin visits. They were also making decisions about cabin use without considering my own preferences, schedule, or comfort level with having strangers in my personal space. The cabin was my retreat and sanctuary as well as a family gathering place, and I valued the peaceful solitude and privacy that had been part of its appeal since I built it. But I didn't immediately object to their assumptions about cabin use, because I wanted to be generous and accommodating, and because I enjoyed seeing the property bring joy to extended family and friends. I also didn't want to create conflict or appear selfish about sharing a space that had become so central to our family's identity and traditions. What I was actually doing was enabling Robert and Christine to develop increasingly presumptuous attitudes about my property and resources while failing to establish clear boundaries that would protect my own interests and preferences. The stage was being set for more serious conflicts about control, decision-making, and respect for my ownership rights. As the twins approached their 5th birthdays, their relationship with the cabin had become the foundation of their understanding of family, nature, and their place in the world. They had spent more time at the cabin than in any other single location, and their earliest and strongest memories were connected to experiences we had shared in that beautiful mountain setting. But their emotional connection to the cabin was also creating a sense of entitlement and ownership that would eventually become problematic. They spoke about our cabin and our mountain as if they had inherent rights to the property rather than privileges granted by my generosity. They made plans for future activities and assumed the cabin would always be available for their use and enjoyment. Most troubling, they had absorbed their parents' assumptions about decision-making authority regarding cabin use and family activities. They would invite friends to visit the cabin without asking permission, assuming that their social preferences took precedence over my property rights or comfort with additional guests. The twins were also beginning to expect that cabin visits would include increasingly expensive activities and experiences. Simple hiking and nature exploration were no longer sufficient entertainment. They wanted organized activities, professional instruction, specialized equipment, and experiences that required significant planning and financial investment. Their expectations were expanding from basic family time at the cabin to elaborate vacation experiences that rivaled expensive resort destinations. They wanted horseback riding lessons, rock climbing instruction, guided fishing expeditions, and adventure. Activities that cost hundreds of dollars per day and required advance reservations and specialized guides. These evolving expectations reflected the twins' development from simple toddlers who were content with basic outdoor exploration to sophisticated children who had been exposed to luxury experiences and now considered them normal rather than special. They were becoming accustomed to a lifestyle that required significant ongoing financial support while remaining unaware of the costs involved or the effort required to provide those experiences. The foundation was being laid for future. Conflicts about expectations, entitlement, and respect for the person whose generosity had created their mountain paradise. But at the time, watching the twins grow and develop their connection to the natural world through experiences at the cabin felt like the fulfillment of everything David and I had hoped for when we designed and built our family retreat. I believed I was creating positive family traditions and supporting the twins' development into confident, capable, nature-loving children who would carry forward our family's values and connections across generations. What I was actually creating was a dynamic where my generosity was taken for granted, my property was treated as a family asset rather than my personal retreat, and my financial resources were viewed as unlimited support for whatever lifestyle and experiences others deemed appropriate. The twins' 5th birthday celebration at the cabin would mark the beginning of a new phase in our family dynamics, one that would test my patience, challenge my generosity, and ultimately force me to make difficult decisions about boundaries, respect, and the true meaning of family loyalty. The twins' 5th birthday celebration in February 2024 marked the beginning of what I now recognize as a systematic escalation in my family's demands and expectations. What started as a simple request for a special mountain birthday party evolved into a $4,500 weekend extravaganza that would set new standards for family celebrations and reveal disturbing attitudes about money, entitlement, and my role as the family's financial provider. Margaret, we want to make this birthday really special since it's such a milestone, Christine explained during a family dinner in January. 5 years old is when kids really start remembering their celebrations, and we want Sophia and Daniel to have amazing memories of their first big kid birthday at the cabin. The initial request seemed reasonable and aligned with my own desires to create meaningful family traditions. I was happy to host a birthday celebration that would give the twins wonderful memories while strengthening their emotional connection to the cabin and to our family's mountain heritage. What did you have in mind? I asked, expecting suggestions for activities like hiking, nature exploration, or simple outdoor games that would be appropriate for 5-year-olds and cost-effective for a family weekend. Well, Robert began enthusiastically, we've been researching birthday party ideas, and there are some amazing companies that specialize in mountain adventure parties for children. They bring all the equipment and instruction for rock climbing, zip lining, treasure hunts, and outdoor challenges that are specifically designed for kids Sophia and Daniel's age. Christine pulled out her phone and showed me a professionally designed website featuring photographs of children engaged in elaborate outdoor activities with specialized equipment and professional instructors. The activities looked exciting and educational, but they also looked expensive and far beyond what most families would consider for a child's birthday party. Adventure Birthday Colorado provides everything, Christine continued with growing excitement. Professional rock climbing walls that they set up on your property, zip lines between trees, treasure hunt activities with real prizes, and educational programs about wildlife and environmental conservation. It's exactly the kind of experience that would combine fun with learning in the beautiful cabin setting. And the best part, Robert added, is that they handle all the setup, supervision, and cleanup. We could invite both sets of grandparents, Christine's sister's family, and several of the twins' friends from preschool without having to worry about managing activities or keeping everyone entertained. The proposed guest list had expanded from immediate family to 15 adults and 8 children, transforming a simple birthday celebration into a major social event that would require significant planning, preparation, and expense. More concerning was the assumption that I would host and presumably fund this elaborate celebration without being consulted about the scope, cost, or my comfort level with such a large gathering. How much would something like this cost? I asked, beginning to understand that this wasn't going to be a simple family birthday party. The adventure activities are $2,200 for the full-day package, Christine replied, but that includes everything: equipment, instruction, insurance, setup, and cleanup. When you consider that it would normally cost over $100 per child for similar activities at adventure parks, it's actually a really good value for the experience they'll provide. And we'd need catering since we're talking about 23 people, Robert added. Mountain Catering Company does amazing family-style meals that would be perfect for a birthday celebration. Their kids' party package is $1,800 and includes everything from appetizers to birthday cake, plus decorations, party favors, photography to capture all the memories, and maybe some special birthday gifts that reflect the mountain adventure theme, Christine continued. We're thinking the total cost would be around $4,500, but it would create memories that last a lifetime and establish a new tradition for milestone birthdays. I sat quietly for a moment, processing the fact that my family had researched, planned, and priced an elaborate birthday celebration costing more than many families spend on entire vacations, and were now presenting it to me as a proposal that seemed to assume my approval and financial support. The amount wasn't the issue. I could easily afford $4,500 for the twins' birthday celebration. The issue was the presumption that such an expensive celebration was appropriate for 5-year-olds, the assumption that I would fund whatever they planned, and the complete absence of consideration for less expensive alternatives that might be equally meaningful. Have you considered simpler activities that might be just as special for the twins? I asked carefully. Hiking adventures, nature scavenger hunts, campfire storytelling, or other activities that would create wonderful memories without requiring professional companies and elaborate setups? Robert and Christine exchanged glances that revealed their disappointment with my suggestion. They had clearly become invested in their elaborate party vision and weren't interested in scaling back their plans to more modest alternatives. Margaret, we want this to be really special, Christine said with a tone that suggested my alternatives weren't adequate. The twins have been talking about their birthday party for weeks, and they're expecting something amazing. We don't want to disappoint them with basic activities when we have the opportunity to give them something truly memorable. And honestly, Robert added, this is the kind of experience that will help them develop confidence, outdoor skills, and positive associations with challenge and adventure. It's not just a party, it's an investment in their development and their relationship with the mountains. They were reframing an expensive birthday party as an educational investment and character-building experience, using my own values about outdoor education and child development to justify expenditures that seemed disproportionate to the occasion. Agreed to fund the birthday celebration because I loved the twins and wanted them to have wonderful memories, because I could afford the expense without financial hardship, and because I didn't want to be seen as selfish or unsupportive when my family was asking for help creating special experiences. But more importantly, I agreed because I trusted Robert and Christine's judgment about what would make their children happy, and I wanted to support their parenting decisions rather than create conflict about family celebrations. What I didn't realize was that this decision established a precedent that elaborate, expensive celebrations were normal family standards, and that my financial support would be available for whatever level of experience they deemed appropriate for family milestones. The birthday party itself was spectacular. Adventure Birthday Colorado transformed our cabin property into a children's adventure park with professional-grade rock climbing walls, zip lines that carried laughing children between mature pine trees, and treasure hunt activities that taught the twins and their friends about local wildlife while providing exciting challenges and real prizes. Sophia thrived on the physical challenges, fearlessly attempting every activity and encouraging shyer children to try new experiences. Daniel approached each challenge methodically, observing other children's techniques before attempting activities himself and demonstrating the same systematic problem-solving approach that had characterized his personality since infancy. Professional instructors were excellent, providing age-appropriate safety instruction while encouraging children to push their comfort zones and develop confidence in outdoor activities. The educational components genuinely taught the children about local ecosystems, wildlife behavior, and environmental conservation in ways that were engaging and memorable. Mountain Catering Company provided a feast that impressed both adults and children, with gourmet versions of kid-friendly foods, locally sourced ingredients, and beautiful presentation that reflected the mountain setting. The birthday cake was a work of art featuring an edible replica of our cabin surrounded by Sugarcraft mountains and wildlife figures. All the adults commented on the exceptional quality of the celebration and the obvious joy it brought to the twins and their friends. Christine's parents, who had driven from Fort Collins, were particularly impressed by the scale and thoughtfulness of the party planning. "Margaret, this is incredible," Christine's mother Linda said as we watched children zip-lining between trees, while their parents enjoyed gourmet appetizers on the cabin's deck. "I've never seen anything like this for a children's birthday party. Sophia and Daniel are so lucky to have experiences like this." "The twins will remember this forever," Christine's father Michael added. "This is the kind of childhood memory that shapes how kids think about family and celebrations. You're giving them something really special." The compliments and positive feedback reinforced my decision to fund the elaborate celebration and made me feel good about providing experiences that brought joy to people I loved. Watching the twins' excitement and seeing their friends' amazement at the adventure activities and beautiful cabin setting gave me tremendous satisfaction. But the birthday party also established new expectations and standards that would affect future family celebrations and create pressure for increasingly elaborate and expensive events. The twins began to expect that birthdays would feature professional entertainment, specialized activities, and experiences that required significant planning and financial investment. More concerning, other family members began to assume that Margaret-funded celebrations were family entitlements rather than generous gifts, and that future milestones would be marked with similar levels of expense and elaboration. Next year, for their 6th birthday, we should do a winter adventure theme, Robert suggested as we cleaned up after the party. Snow sports instruction, sledding competitions, maybe even a horse-drawn sleigh ride through the national forest. The twins would love learning to ski or snowboard on their birthday. And for Christmas this year, we should definitely plan something special to match the birthday party standards, Christine added. Maybe professional Christmas photography, elaborate decorating themes, or special holiday activities that make Christmas at the cabin as memorable as their birthday celebration. They were already planning future expensive celebrations and assuming my continued financial support for whatever level of experience they deemed appropriate. The birthday party had become a baseline for family celebration standards rather than a special one-time gift. 6 months after the birthday party, when the twins started kindergarten at Boulder Valley Waldorf School, the conversation about educational choices revealed how dramatically Robert and Christine's expectations had evolved. Since their early days of financial responsibility and modest lifestyle choices. Margaret, we've been touring schools for Sophia and Daniel, and we've found the perfect educational environment for their creative and intellectual development, Christine announced during one of our weekly family dinners in August. Boulder Valley Waldorf School has an approach to childhood education that emphasizes creativity, imagination, and connection to nature. Exactly the values we want to instill in the twins. The Waldorf School was indeed an excellent educational institution, with a strong reputation for fostering creativity, critical thinking, and individual development. The school's philosophy emphasized hands-on learning, artistic expression, and outdoor education that seemed perfectly aligned with the twins' personalities and our family's values. The school's approach to learning through experience rather than testing and competition really appeals to us, Robert explained. They emphasize storytelling, music, art, and practical skills like woodworking and gardening that help children develop confidence and creativity while learning academic subjects. And the outdoor education program is incredible, Christine added enthusiastically. They have partnerships with local farms and nature centers that allow children to learn about environmental science through direct experience with animals, plants, and natural systems. The educational philosophy sounded wonderful and seemed like it would provide Sophia and Daniel with learning experiences that would complement their experiences at the cabin and their development as confident, creative, nature-loving children. What about the neighborhood public school? I asked, wanting to understand why they were considering private education when Boulder's public schools had excellent reputations and would provide high-quality education at no cost to the family. The two in public school is fine, Christine replied with a tone that suggested fine wasn't adequate for their children. But it has class sizes of 28 children with one teacher, standardized testing that starts in 3rd grade, and limited individual attention for children with different learning styles and creative abilities. We want Sophia and Daniel to have the best possible educational foundation, Robert added. Waldorf classes have only 16 children with 2 teachers, individualized learning plans, and an approach that recognizes each child's unique talents and interests. Plus, the school community is made up of families who share our values about child development, environmental consciousness, and creative expression, Christine continued. The twins would be surrounded by children whose families prioritize the same things we prioritize. The arguments for private school were compelling and reflected genuine concerns about providing the twins with educational experiences that would nurture their individual talents while challenging them intellectually. But the annual tuition cost was $14,500 per child, $29,000 total, which represented more than half of Robert's annual income and was completely beyond what their family could afford. "We know the tuition is expensive," Christine acknowledged, "but we see this as an investment in their future that will provide benefits throughout their lives. The critical thinking skills, creativity, and confidence they develop at Waldorf will serve them in whatever careers they choose." "And honestly," Robert added, "we think this is exactly the kind of expense that family resources should support. Education is the foundation for everything else, and we don't want the twins to be limited by our current financial situation when there are family resources available to provide them with the best possible opportunities." They were positioning private school tuition as a family investment rather than a personal choice, and framing my potential financial support as ensuring that the twins weren't limited by their parents' income rather than as funding a luxury that their parents had chosen but couldn't afford. The conversation was carefully orchestrated to make refusing to pay tuition seem like I was denying my grandchildren educational opportunities and limiting their potential development. The focus was entirely on the twins' needs and future success, with no acknowledgement that their parents had chosen an expensive option without considering whether they could afford it independently. I agreed to pay the private school tuition because I believed in the value of excellent education, because I wanted Sophia and Daniel to have opportunities that would maximize their potential, and because I could afford the expense without financial hardship. But more importantly, I agreed because I trusted Robert and Christine's judgment about what educational environment would best serve their children, and I wanted to support their parenting decisions rather than create conflict about schooling choices that would affect the twins for years to come. What I didn't realize was that this decision established another precedent that expensive choices were family decisions rather than individual household decisions, and that my financial support would be available for whatever educational, social, or lifestyle options they deemed beneficial for their children. The private school tuition became the first major recurring expense that I was expected to handle without ongoing discussion, annual reconsideration, or regard for changes in Robert and Christine's income, or my willingness to continue funding their choices. During the twins' first year at Waldorf School, their educational and social experiences expanded dramatically, but so did their expectations about activities, equipment, and experiences that required ongoing financial support beyond basic tuition costs. The school's emphasis on music education meant that both children needed instruments for their individual and group music instruction. Sophia chose violin, which required a child-sized instrument, case, bow, music stand, and ongoing maintenance that cost approximately $800 initially and $200 annually for strings, adjustments, and repairs. Daniel selected recorder and drums, which required a professional quality wooden recorder, a practice drum set for home use, rhythm instruments for school performances, and music books and accessories that totaled approximately $600 initially and $150 annually for replacements and additions. The school really emphasizes that children should have quality instruments that produce beautiful sounds and inspire musical development, Christine explained when presenting me with invoices for musical equipment. Cheap instruments are frustrating for children and can create negative associations with music learning. The school's outdoor education program required specialized clothing and equipment for hiking, camping, and seasonal outdoor activities. Waterproof hiking boots, rain gear, warm layers for winter outdoor education, backpacks designed for children, and sun hats and protective clothing for summer activities totaled approximately $400 per child and needed replacement as they grew. We want to make sure Sophia and Daniel can participate fully in outdoor education without being limited by inadequate gear, Robert explained when requesting funding for outdoor equipment. The school's outdoor programs are one of the main reasons we chose Waldorf, and we don't want the twins to miss experiences because of equipment issues. The school's emphasis on artistic expression meant ongoing costs for art supplies, project materials, and creative tools that exceeded the basic supplies included in tuition. Special papers for wet-on-wet watercolor techniques, natural modeling materials like beeswax and clay, woodworking tools sized for children, and textile materials for handwork projects cost approximately $300 per child per semester. Art education. At Waldorf isn't just drawing and painting, Christine explained when requesting funding for specialized art supplies. It's about developing fine motor skills, spatial reasoning, and creative problem-solving through hands-on work with natural materials. Each request was presented as supporting the twins' educational development rather than as optional expenses, and was framed in terms of the school's requirements or recommendations rather than as family choices about discretionary spending. More concerning was the way these requests were presented as urgent needs rather than as advance planning for anticipated expenses. Musical instruments were needed before next week's music class. Outdoor gear was required for the camping trip that's already been scheduled. Art supplies were necessary for the project that starts Monday. The timing pressure made it difficult for me to research alternatives, compare prices, or suggest that Robert and Christine should budget for educational expenses rather than treating them as emergency costs that required immediate external funding. By the end of the twins' first year at Waldorf, I had contributed approximately $4,200 beyond tuition costs to support their educational expenses. Combined with the $29,000 annual tuition, my educational support for the twins totaled $30,200, more than many families' entire annual income and more than Robert earned from his nonprofit work. But I was happy to provide this support because I believed in investing in the twins' development, because the school was providing excellent educational experiences, and because I could see the positive effects of creative, individualized education on their confidence and intellectual growth. What I didn't recognize was that Robert and Christine were learning to make educational and lifestyle decisions based on what I could afford rather than what they could afford, and that my willingness to fund expensive choices was enabling them to avoid the financial planning and priority setting that would have been necessary if they were paying for these choices themselves. 8 months into the twins' first year at Waldorf, Robert made an announcement that would dramatically increase the family's dependence on my financial support while demonstrating how far their expectations had evolved from their early days of modest living and financial responsibility. "Margaret, I've been offered an incredible opportunity that could really advance my career and provide better income security for our family," Robert announced during one of our weekly coffee meetings. The Rocky Mountain Environmental Alliance has invited me to join their staff as Regional Education Coordinator, developing and implementing environmental education programs throughout Colorado. The position sounded like an excellent match for Robert's interests and values, combining his passion for environmental protection with his experience in education and program development. The organization had a strong reputation for effective environmental advocacy and educational outreach throughout the Rocky Mountain region. The job would involve designing curriculum for schools, organizing community workshops, coordinating with other environmental organizations, and developing partnerships with outdoor education providers, Robert explained with genuine enthusiasm. "It's exactly the kind of work I've always wanted to do, combining environmental education with program management and community outreach." "That sounds wonderful," I replied, pleased to see Robert excited about a career opportunity that seemed aligned with his talents and interests. "What's the salary and timeline for this position?" Robert's expression changed slightly as he prepared to deliver information that would explain why this career opportunity was being presented to me as a family discussion rather than simply exciting personal news. "The salary is $52,000 annually, which is actually a $10,000 increase from my current nonprofit position," he began. "But the job requires extensive travel throughout Colorado for program development and implementation, and it involves some evening and weekend work that would conflict with my current schedule," The travel requirements mean I'd need a more reliable vehicle, he continued. My current car has 180,000 miles and isn't appropriate for mountain driving in winter conditions, or for representing a professional environmental organization at meetings and conferences. Christine jumped in to provide additional context that revealed the scope of financial support this career opportunity would require. We've been researching vehicles that would be appropriate for Robert's new position, and we need something that combines professional appearance with all-weather reliability and cargo space for educational materials and equipment. A late-model Subaru Outback or similar all-wheel drive vehicle would be perfect, Robert explained. Reliable, fuel-efficient, good in snow, and appropriate for both professional meetings and outdoor education activities. We're looking at vehicles in the $28,000 to $32,000 range. The career opportunity was contingent on my funding a vehicle purchase that represented approximately 60% of Robert's new annual salary, and was completely beyond what the family could afford, given their current expenses and my existing financial support for household costs and the twins' education. We also think this is a good time to consider professional development investments. That would enhance Robert's effectiveness in his new role, Christine added. Additional training in environmental education, program management certification, and membership in professional organizations that would provide networking and continued learning opportunities. The total investment in Robert's career development would be approximately $35,000, Christine explained. The vehicle purchase, plus training programs, conference attendance, and professional memberships that would help him succeed in his new position and potentially advance to higher-level opportunities within the environmental field. They were presenting Robert's career change as a family investment that required my financial support and positioning my funding as enabling his professional development rather than simply covering expenses they couldn't afford. More concerning was their assumption that Robert's career advancement was a family priority that justified whatever financial support was necessary, regardless of whether they had explored less expensive alternatives or considered the cumulative impact on my budget and their dependence on my funding. I agreed to provide the career transition funding because I wanted to support Robert's professional development, because the position seemed like genuine progress toward meaningful work, and because I hoped that higher income and career satisfaction would eventually reduce their dependence on my financial support. But I also agreed because I believed this was a temporary investment that would provide lasting benefits, and because Robert and Christine had presented the opportunity as requiring immediate action to secure a position that might not be available if we delayed while exploring alternative funding sources. What actually happened was that Robert's new career created additional ongoing expenses while providing modest income improvement that was quickly absorbed by lifestyle inflation rather than reducing their dependence on my financial support. The vehicle purchase, professional development costs, and increased travel expenses associated with Robert's new position totaled approximately $38,000 in the first year, while his salary increase provided only $10,000 in additional household income. More problematically, Robert's career success and professional recognition reinforced his and Christine's belief that my financial support was enabling important family achievements rather than simply covering expenses they couldn't afford independently. Robert's work is getting recognition throughout the environmental community, Christine would report proudly. His programs are being implemented by organizations across Colorado, and he's been invited to speak at the Regional Environmental Education Conference in Denver. The new position has opened doors for Robert that could lead to even better opportunities, she would continue. We're so grateful that you made this career advancement possible through your support for his professional development. They were attributing Robert's professional success to my financial support rather than to his talents and efforts, which reinforced their dependence on external funding while diminishing their confidence in their ability to achieve goals through their own resources and planning. By the time the twins turned 6, I was contributing approximately $55,000 annually to support various aspects of their family life. Private school tuition, educational expenses, Robert's career development costs, vehicle payments, household assistance, and ongoing support for family activities and celebrations that had become expectations rather than special gifts. This level of financial support exceeded Robert's entire annual income and represented a lifestyle that was completely unsustainable without my ongoing contributions. But Robert and Christine had gradually adjusted their expectations and planning around my support, rather than developing independence or scaling their choices to match their actual earning capacity. Most troubling was the complete absence of discussion about reducing their dependence on my funding or developing long-term financial independence. Instead of viewing my support as temporary assistance that would help them build toward self-sufficiency, they had restructured their entire lifestyle around the assumption that Margaret's funding would be available indefinitely for whatever choices they deemed appropriate for their family. The twins were also absorbing lessons about money, family dynamics, and entitlement that would become increasingly problematic as they grew older, and their understanding of family financial arrangements became more sophisticated. "Grandma Margaret, why do other kids' families have to save money for things when we can just ask you?" Sophia asked during one of our cabin visits. "Emma's mom said they can't afford dance classes, but couldn't her grandma just pay for them?" "Like you pay for mine." "Grandma, Tyler's family is selling their house because his dad lost his job," Daniel reported with confusion. "Why don't they just ask their family for money like we do when we need help?" These questions revealed that the twins were developing unrealistic expectations about normal family financial resources and dynamics. They were learning that asking family members for money was a viable solution to financial challenges, rather than understanding that most families must live within their own means and make difficult choices about priorities and spending. They were also learning that their lifestyle and opportunities were normal rather than exceptional, and that they were entitled to experiences and possessions that required ongoing external financial support. The stage was set for further escalation in demands and expectations, but also for increasing resistance from me as I began to recognize that my generosity was enabling dependency rather than supporting genuine family development and independence. The twins' 6th birthday would mark another milestone in our family's financial dynamics, but it would also be the beginning of my growing awareness that something fundamental had shifted in our relationships and that the mountain paradise I had created was becoming a source of exploitation rather than family connection. The conversation that would end our family relationship forever happened on a frigid December evening, just 4 days before Christmas 2024. When the Colorado mountains were blanketed in fresh snow and the cabin should have been filled with the warmth of family preparation for our most cherished holiday traditions. Instead, I found myself sitting in the cabin's great room, surrounded by my son, daughter-in-law, and now 7-year-old twins, listening to what Christine would later call a necessary family intervention, but what I recognized as the culmination of 3 years of systematic manipulation and financial exploitation. "Margaret, we need to have an honest conversation about family dynamics and holiday expectations," Christine began, her voice carrying the tone of someone who had prepared extensively for this discussion. "We've been talking as a family, and we feel that some changes need to be made to ensure that everyone can enjoy Christmas without unnecessary stress and conflict." The twins sat quietly on the couch, clearly instructed to listen but not participate, while Robert nodded supportively at Christine's words. The formal atmosphere felt completely foreign to our usual family gatherings and immediately put me on alert. "What kind of changes are you talking about?" I asked carefully. "Well, we've been reflecting on the past few years of Christmas celebrations, and we've identified some patterns that create tension," Christine continued, consulting notes she had apparently prepared. "You tend to micromanage holiday preparations instead of allowing us to take ownership of creating our own family traditions. You make decisions about menus, decorations, and activities without consulting us about our preferences. And you sometimes make comments about expenses that make us feel uncomfortable about enjoying the experiences you're providing," Robert added. It creates a dynamic where we feel like we're walking on eggshells instead of celebrating as a family. I was having difficulty processing what I was hearing. They were criticizing me for managing preparations for holidays that I was funding and hosting at my own property, and for occasionally mentioning expenses when they seemed to have unlimited expectations. "So, what changes are you proposing?" I asked, though I suspected this wasn't going to be about simple holiday planning adjustments. Christine and Robert exchanged glances before Christine delivered what was clearly the main purpose of their intervention. "We've decided that this year's Christmas celebration should be hosted by us at our house instead of at the cabin," she announced. "We want to create our own family traditions without feeling like guests in someone else's space." "That sounds wonderful," I replied genuinely. "I'd be happy to attend Christmas at your house and contribute however you'd like me to help." "Actually," Christine said, her voice dropping to a more serious tone, "we've decided that this year we need some space to establish our own holiday traditions without outside influence or complications." "What does that mean?" "It means we think it would be better if you didn't attend Christmas this year," Robert said, with a directness that took my breath away. "We want to have a quiet family Christmas with just us and the twins." I sat in complete shock as I realized my son and daughter-in-law were disinviting me from Christmas. Not just from hosting, but from attending any family celebration at all. "You're telling me I'm not welcome at Christmas?" "We're telling you that this year we need space to create our own family Christmas without complications," Christine replied, positioning my presence as a problem to be solved. "What about Sophia and Daniel?" I asked, looking at my grandchildren. "What have you told them about their grandmother not being at Christmas?" "We've explained that sometimes families need to try different ways of celebrating," Christine answered carefully. "Grandma Margaret," Sophia said quietly, "Mom and Dad said you might be too busy to come to Christmas this year because you have important work to do." The fact that they had lied to the twins about the reason for my absence revealed the level of manipulation they were willing to exercise. They weren't just excluding me, they were rewriting the narrative to make my absence seem like my choice. "Margaret, we want you to know that this decision isn't about not appreciating everything you've done for our family," Christine said with practiced sincerity. "But we think that continuing to rely on your financial support in hosting might be preventing us from developing independence and self-reliance." They were positioning their exclusion of me as a character-building exercise and suggesting that my generosity had been harmful to their family's development, while clearly expecting to maintain future access to the cabin they assumed they would inherit. That's when I realized this wasn't about Christmas at all. This was about gaining control over family relationships while maintaining access to my property and resources. They wanted independence from my opinions and oversight while preserving their children's inheritance rights to the cabin. I excused myself and went to the observation deck to process what had just happened and make some decisions about how I was going to respond to this level of manipulation and disrespect. Standing in the cold December air, looking out over the mountains that David and I had loved, I experienced a moment of absolute clarity about my situation and my options. Robert and Christine had just demonstrated that they valued my financial support and property access more than my emotional well-being or family relationships. They believed I was dependent on their relationship for access to my grandchildren and that I would accept any treatment rather than risk losing that access. They were about to discover exactly how wrong they were. Standing on that deck, I made the decision that would change everything. I was going to sell the cabin immediately and use this Christmas exclusion as the perfect opportunity to end a relationship that had become exploitative and disrespectful. Returned to the great room and interrupted their conversation with an announcement that would shatter their assumptions about power and control. "I've been thinking about what you said regarding space for developing family independence," I began calmly. "And I realize you're absolutely right that it's time for some significant changes in our family arrangements." "We're so glad you understand," Christine said with satisfaction. "I do understand, so I've decided to sell the cabin," The silence that followed was profound. All three adults stared at me in complete shock, while the twins looked confused about why the atmosphere had suddenly changed. "What do you mean, sell the cabin?" Christine asked, her voice rising with alarm. "I mean, I'm going to put the cabin on the market and sell it to someone who will appreciate it," I replied matter-of-factly. "Since you want to establish independent family traditions without my involvement, it makes perfect sense for me to liquidate this property." "But Mom, the cabin is our family's gathering place," Robert stammered. "You can't just sell it." "Actually, I can. It's my property, purchased with my money, built with my planning, and maintained with my resources. Since you've made it clear that you prefer celebrating holidays independently, there's no reason for me to maintain an expensive mountain property for family gatherings I'm not welcome to attend." "Grandma Margaret, what does selling the cabin mean?" Sophia asked with growing concern. "It means when someone sells a house, the new owners get to decide who can visit, sweetheart. And they probably won't want strangers using their mountain retreat." "But this is our Christmas cabin," Daniel protested. "We always come here for Christmas." "Your parents have decided they want to create new Christmas traditions at your house instead of continuing to celebrate at the cabin. So I'm going to sell it to someone who will create their own special memories here." Robert and Christine were staring at me with expressions of absolute panic as they realized their strategy had backfired completely. "Margaret, you're being irrational," Christine said, her voice shaking. "You can't make major property decisions based on one conversation." "I'm not being irrational. I'm being practical. You've told me my involvement creates stress and complications. Selling the cabin eliminates both problems permanently." "This is emotional manipulation," Christine accused. "No," I said firmly. "Emotional manipulation is excluding someone from Christmas while expecting them to maintain property for your future. Emotional manipulation is teaching children that their grandmother is too busy to attend Christmas instead of explaining that you chose to exclude her." "Mom, please don't sell the cabin," Robert begged. "We can work this out." "You meant exactly what you said. You want independence from my involvement, and I'm giving you complete independence." "Think about what this means for Sophia and Daniel," Christine pleaded desperately. "You're punishing them for adult decisions they had no part in making. I'm making a rational business decision about an expensive asset that no longer serves its intended purpose, and Sophia and Daniel are learning important lessons about consequences and honesty." The twins were beginning to cry as they realized their Christmas exclusion of their grandmother was going to result in losing their beloved mountain paradise permanently. "We want you to come to Christmas," Sophia said through her tears. "We didn't. No, Mom and Dad told you not to come." "I'm sorry, sweethearts, but your parents made a decision that shows they don't value having me as part of your family celebrations. When people don't value your presence, the appropriate response is to stop providing them with things they do value." "Margaret, let's start over," Christine pleaded. "We'll include you in Christmas. We made a mistake." "No. You revealed your true feelings about my role in your family. You showed me that you value my property and financial support more than my presence. You're destroying our family over one conversation," Christine said with rage and desperation. "I'm ending my participation in a relationship that has become one-sided and exploitative. You wanted independence from my involvement. Now you have complete independence." I looked around the cabin one final time. "I'm listing the cabin with a real estate agent tomorrow morning. I'll give you until the sale closes to remove any personal belongings you've stored here." As I prepared to leave, Sophia ran to me and threw her arms around my waist. "Grandma Margaret, please don't sell our cabin. Please don't leave our family." "Sweetheart, I'm not leaving your family. Your parents decided they didn't want me to be part of your family celebrations. I'm just respecting their decision. You wanted family independence and freedom from my expectations," I told Robert and Christine one final time. "Congratulations. You've achieved exactly what you asked for." I walked out of the cabin and drove back to Denver, leaving behind Years of family memories and beginning the process of reclaiming my independence and self-respect. The next morning, I called Coleman Mountain Properties and listed the cabin for $1.2 million. The agent was thrilled to handle the listing and confident it would sell quickly given the cabin's reputation and the strong luxury mountain real estate market. "I want it sold as quickly as possible," I told her. "Price it to move fast." "With the right marketing, I expect offers within 2 weeks," she replied confidently. My phone started ringing that afternoon with increasingly frantic calls from Robert and Christine. "Mom, we've been thinking about everything that happened, and we realize we made serious mistakes," Robert's first message said. "We want to fix this before you make any permanent decisions." "There's nothing to fix," I replied when I finally answered. "You told me exactly what you think about my role in your family. The cabin is listed and will be sold." "We can change our Christmas plans," he said desperately. "We want you there." "No, you don't. You want the cabin to be available for your use, but you don't actually want me there because you've made it clear my presence creates stress and complications." "What would it take for you to reconsider?" he finally asked. "Nothing. The decision is made." Christine's call was more strategic. "Margaret, we may have communicated our concerns poorly. We're grateful for everything you've done. But yesterday, you said my involvement creates stress and complications. That was a mistake in communication. We should have proposed co-hosting or alternating responsibilities. Christine, you specifically told me it would be better if I didn't attend Christmas. Those weren't miscommunicated intentions. Those were clear statements. Think about Sophia and Daniel," she pleaded. "Are you really willing to take the cabin away from them because of adult disagreements? I'm not taking anything away. You took it away when you excluded me from family celebrations. I'm simply responding by ending my role as the provider of family experiences." 2 weeks after listing the cabin, I received 3 offers, all above asking price. The highest was $1.3 million all cash, with a 30-day closing. "Accept the highest offer," I said without hesitation. Within an hour, Robert was calling in complete panic. "The cabin is under contract. This is insane. You're destroying 35 years of family history." "I'm selling my property to people who will appreciate and respect it. We'll buy it from you," he said desperately. "You have 30 days to arrange financing and make a competitive offer," I said, knowing they couldn't qualify for a $1.3 million mortgage on their $85,000 combined income. The sale closed on January 28, 2025. I received $1.3 million and handed over the keys to a lovely family from San Francisco who fell in love with the cabin's architecture and planned to use it for family vacations. That same day, Christine called with final words filled with venom. "You've destroyed our family. You're a bitter, selfish old woman who cares more about control than family." "I haven't destroyed anything. I've responded appropriately to being excluded from family celebrations by ending my role as the provider of those celebrations. Will never forgive you for this." "I don't need your forgiveness. I need your absence from my life, which you've already provided." 6 months later, mutual friends reported that my decision had forced Robert and Christine to confront reality. Without my support, Sophia and Daniel enrolled in excellent public school. The family scaled their lifestyle to match their actual income and learned to live within their means. Robert and Christine both worked full-time and developed budgeting, skills they'd never needed while depending on my subsidies. Most importantly, they learned to create celebrations based on their actual resources rather than external funding. The twins adapted well, developing work ethics and appreciation for experiences rather than taking them for granted. 2 years later, Robert called with an unexpected apology. "Margaret, I wanted to apologize. We treated you terribly. We took advantage of your generosity, disrespected your opinions, and excluded you cruelly. We thought because you had money and we needed help, we were entitled to your support without treating you with respect. We were wrong about everything. What made you realize this? Losing the cabin and learning to live independently. When we couldn't depend on your support, we developed skills we'd never needed. We realized we'd been living beyond our means while blaming you for any stress that came from expenses we couldn't actually afford. Losing your support was the best thing that happened to our family. We're stronger and more independent because we learned to solve our own problems. Do the twins ask about me? They do. They miss you, and they understand now that excluding you was wrong. They've learned about consequences in ways that were necessary for their character development. I'm not asking you to restore our relationship, Robert continued. I understand we broke something that can't be repaired. But I wanted you to know we're grateful for the lessons you taught us, even though we learned them the hard way. Robert, I appreciate your apology, I replied. It sounds like you've learned important lessons about independence and respect. I'm glad Sophia and Daniel are thriving. But you're right that some damage can't be undone. The Christmas exclusion revealed attitudes that changed my understanding of our relationship permanently. However, I hold no anger toward any of you. I'm genuinely happy you've developed independence and stronger family relationships. Selling the cabin wasn't punishment. It was a logical response to changed circumstances. When you excluded me from family celebrations, the cabin was no longer serving its purpose as a family gathering place. 3 years after selling the cabin, I was living exactly the independent, dignified life I had always valued. My resources were secure and growing. My time was my own. Most importantly, I was surrounded by people who valued my presence for its own sake rather than for what I could provide. I had reconnected with longtime friends, resumed consulting work, and become involved with charities that aligned with my values. I had begun traveling extensively and developed new friendships with people who knew nothing about my wealth and enjoyed my company purely for my personality and interests. If you're watching this story and recognizing similar patterns, know that you have more power than you realize. Love doesn't require accepting mistreatment. Generosity doesn't require enabling irresponsibility. Being a good family member doesn't require sacrificing your well-being for others' comfort. You have the right to set boundaries about how your resources are used and how you're treated by people who benefit from your generosity. You have the right to demand respect and consideration from family members, regardless of how much support you provide. You have the right to change or end relationships that become exploitative or disrespectful, even when they involve people you love. If family members threaten to withdraw love or access to grandchildren because you won't submit to their demands, they're revealing that their relationship with you is transactional rather than genuine. If people only treat you well when you're providing money or services, they don't love you. They love what you can do for them. The temporary discomfort of establishing boundaries is worth the long-term benefits of relationships based on genuine mutual affection rather than financial arrangements. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stop enabling exploitation and force people to develop the character and independence they need for genuine success. The cabin I sold taught my family more valuable lessons about respect and consequences than any gift I ever gave them. Sometimes you have to lose a gathering place to discover your true family values. Sometimes you have to sell the cabin to save yourself. What would you have done in my situation? Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more stories of people who chose themselves when others wouldn't choose them. Remember, when they tell you you're not welcome at Christmas, the appropriate response isn't to beg for inclusion. It's to sell the cabin they love so much and let them create their own traditions with their own resources. The most satisfying Christmas gift you can give yourself is freedom from people who mistake your kindness for weakness. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.